She had managed to convince herself that she actually is Circus Baby. She spent 2 decades living a lie. What has she become now? And this girl she almost killed, that was her sister? Elizabeth felt disgust with herself, realizing she almost killed her own sister. She realized another thing. Her brother Michael was dead because of her. What has she done? Michael quickly forgave her. Michael said he'd let Elizabeth and the others use his body. His only request was they had to take care of Vanessa. Elizabeth agreed, but the other Funtimes still wanted to kill her. Elizabeth was in control of Ennard, so she managed to detain them. Michael suggested they change the eye color they chose for the skin suit. Elizabeth had chosen purple eyes, but that was not a natural eye color, so Michael suggested they use blue instead because his eyes had already been blue when he was alive. Ennard used Michael as a skin suit, but every day the body was rotting more and more, and eventually it became noticeable to people around them. Vanessa even would hide in her room during the day because she was afraid of the way her brother looked. Eventually, Michael's body just wasn't usable anymore, and they aborted from him. Elizabeth didn't want to see her brother stay lifeless, however. She thought if they weren't using Michael anymore, then she'd at least help him out now. Elizabeth left a piece of baby's endo inside of Michael's body. She attached a small part of her soul to that endo and reassured Michael he wouldn't die. Michael felt his soul slam right back into his body as he got up. He was alive again? Elizabeth had brought him back to life? Michael stood up. He felt his eyes grow back. Not only was he alive, but his body was healing itself, and Elizabeth, she remembered her past. She was free. He had completed his mission with his sister and the other kids in the Funtimes. Now, Michael had to go to Freddy's. As he arrived at the abandoned restaurant, he was surprised to find out none of the animatronics were on stage. Where were they? Michael looked around for them. Eventually, he found the animatronic suits. Broken. What happened? Where were their endoskeletons? Oh no. Oh no. Michael figured it out almost immediately. They were in the Funtimes, weren't they? Maybe their souls weren't quite at peace. He was surprised the Funtimes didn't recognize him. They instead thought he was his dad. Michael had to find his father. He had to end everything. But how? Michael spent weeks searching for his father. It was like the man had just disappeared off the face of the earth. How would he find him? And he had to do something about Vanessa. Vanessa was scared of Michael after his body had rotted in front of her. Even though he had been fully healed by now, Vanessa was still hesitant to be around him. Thankfully, Michael was able to call his grandparents. His grandma and grandpa agreed to take Vanessa and raise her. Well, now that problem was solved, Michael thought, but he still couldn't find his dad anywhere. It was just dead end after dead end. Eventually, Michael had to give up. At least Freddy's and Baby's were closed, and with his dad out of the picture, he wouldn't hurt anyone else, right? However, Michael still kept an eye out just in case. Chica's Party World was still open. He had to make sure nothing bad happened at that place. It was a crazy year. The rental service lost all of its main animatronics, but there were more that wanted to escape. Poor Stanley was a victim of the mini-arenas, who managed to crawl in his body to escape. Same thing happened to other people with the Biddy Babs and all the other mini-arenas. Meanwhile, with Ennard, the kids in their own world were getting fed up with that Elizabeth kid. She was always telling them what to do, and it was so annoying. Eventually, the Funtimes had found a way to throw Baby out of Ennard, and they did. Ennard was now on its own without Baby. Funtime Freddy was the one to take over. Elizabeth was now completely on her own. Too many bad people. Cassidy had been scrambling for a while. She still couldn't figure out how to put her friends back together. Every time she put some of the pages together, they just blow away again. Cassidy started to wonder if this was even, You know, it would be easier to focus on this if there weren't so many people trying to butt in and take away her friend's happiest day. You know what? No, Cassidy was done with these people. She was going to get them out of here. Cassidy left the group for a bit. She hunted for anyone she could find that seemed like a bad person, and then she would use her powers to appear to them as a young boy named Kelsey. Anyone that seemed extra suspicious, she would target. She would get them to find an abandoned Freddy's, but she always made them think it was their idea. As Kelsey, she'd follow them into the old Freddy's and show herself get spring-locked in the Fredbear suit. Then, when the time was right, Cassidy would give them enough nightmares to make them come back to the Freddy's, and then she would spring-lock her victims herself. It worked every single time. Michael has been a construction worker for quite some time. It was actually making pretty good money. Michael was able to afford a pretty nice house. He was doing a lot better financially than he was a couple decades ago. It's been good, but then as Michael was reading the newspapers, oh come on, Michael thought. This was disgusting. Apparently some group of young adults thought it would be fun to open this place called Fazbear's Fright. Fazbear's Fright took relics from the old pizzerias and turned it into a haunted house for an amusement park. Ew, these people are making the murders, the tragedies into a joke? What the hell? But if this was what was going to happen, Michael had to be part of it. Michael applied for the night guard position. Michael's boss always updated him when they found new things at the Freddy's locations. Eventually, something interesting did happen. Michael felt that there was another conscious in the building. It was like how he felt working at Freddy's back in '93. Michael felt some sort of aura with Fazbear's Fright. It was like something there in the building was conscious. Something wanted Michael to find it. What was happening? Michael opened up the cameras, looking around for whatever this thing was. Eventually, he found it. One of the hallways had a drawing. That drawing was of BB. The drawing was somehow calling to Michael? Michael closed his eyes and focused all his energy onto that drawing. It had to mean something. Michael concentrated hard on getting the drawing's attention. Meanwhile, Cassidy was watching over her friends. She had tried piecing them together many times, but to no avail. She didn't want to accept the fate of her friends being divided, even after all these years, but it felt like she couldn't do anything about it at this point. Every time she tried to grab one of the pages blowing around that were of her friends, they would just blow away. Suddenly, the world around Cassidy began to warp. Something was happening. What the? Cassidy asked. She was transferred somewhere to, huh? Cassidy looked down at her body. She wasn't in her body, she was BB? What was going on? Cassidy looked around her. There were balloons begging to be collected. Cassidy collected the balloons and an exit door opened up. Good, Cassidy thought, I can leave this weird place now. But before Cassidy walked over to the exit, she looked at the wall behind her. Something felt. Cassidy reached her hand through the wall. Huh? Cassidy was phasing through the wall? What was happening? Cassidy jumped through the wall, needing to investigate. She fell a great distance, but was unharmed. She then found Shadow BB standing beside each other, crying. Poor guys, Cassidy thought. She walked past them and found a balloon, but something about this balloon felt special, magical. The balloon was changing colors. Cassidy stepped closer and closer to it, reaching out to touch it. As she grabbed the balloon, reality warped again. She was somewhere new? It wasn't Freddy's, but it had all these items from Freddy's locations. Was it some sort of museum? She explored the place. It looked very creepy for some reason. Cassidy found a security office housing... Wait, is that? Cassidy recognized that guy. She'd seen him before. Was he the reason she's here? Cassidy decided she'd stick around for a few more nights. She wasn't entirely sure who this guy was, but she had the feeling he could help her. Michael opened his eyes again. That was weird. Nothing changed. Yet, at the same time, it felt like he did do something. Maybe working at Fazbear's Fright will be worth it after all. Michael decided he will keep investigating whatever this was. Where am I? William woke up in an unfamiliar place. He looked down at his body. Uh-oh, he thought. William had been spring-locked before, but this was different. Usually someone had been able to help him before too much damage was done, but this time, what year was it? What happened to his body? William realized he must have been dead for quite some time because his body was rotten. It was strange, he couldn't remember anything about being dead. William couldn't take the suit off. He realized his body was too rotten, but somehow he was alive again? William didn't fully understand. He got up and wandered the halls of this new place. It looked like some sort of museum. Then William noticed a camera, blinking red light. Someone was watching him. You know what? William thought, maybe this new reality wouldn't be so bad. Perhaps this security guard could be his first kill. Michael listened to his boss. He immediately had to check when he was told they found one. Michael looked at the cameras and saw it, the old spring Bonnie suit, very decayed. Michael didn't know how, but he could sense his father was in that suit. That's where his dad had gone. Oh hell no, Michael thought. This will end soon. Michael wanted to burn this place to the ground, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. He had to figure out what was going on inside this building. Michael felt something new calling to him. An arcade machine. He searched for it on the cameras, but then, what was that? It looked like BB. Suddenly, the cameras flipped down by themselves and the burned BB jumped at Michael. Michael began to breathe heavily. The ventilation suddenly had to be reset. What was that thing? Michael had been just thinking about burning down Fazbear's Fright, and now his thoughts came to life. Interesting. The supernatural realm really was something. Speaking of which, Michael went back to the cameras and found that arcade machine. He closed his eyes and concentrated on it. Meanwhile, with Cassidy, she found herself in another world again. But this time, she was Mangle. Cassidy recognized this. This was Mangle's quest. This was part of her home. She knew what to do. Cassidy collected different parts for Mangle. Perfect. That's all she has to do, right? But then, Cassidy remembered last time there was something odd. She was able to phase through a wall. She wondered if... No! She did it again! Cassidy fell a great distance, but was unharmed after phasing through another wall. She found what looked like the puppet? Cassidy never really liked the puppet that much. She was controlled by some girl named Charlie, but Charlie was really annoying. Cassidy's friends were pretty neutral with Charlie. She was nice, but she should stop saying such terrible things about the yellow rabbit. Cassidy loved the yellow rabbit. He was her friend. Cassidy found a pile of balloons nearby, and it almost looked like she could... Cassidy jumped onto a balloon. Whoa, the balloons were actually holding her up? She was jumping from balloon to balloon. This was cool. Then Cassidy found something. A cake. Cassidy wanted a cake. She reached out, and then she was back in the museum. But she had the cake with her. Michael opened his eyes. He felt the BB drawing calling to him again. This had to mean something. Michael went back to where the BB drawing was on the cameras and interacted with it again. Cassidy found herself back in the BB world. She was BB again. Okay, Cassidy thought, what's my next quest? She jumped into the same void as last time, but now she had a balloon hold her up for support. Cassidy jumped balloon to balloon, and then she found one of her friends. It was Gabriel. Cassidy still had the cake on her. She offered it to Gabriel, and then back at the museum, but Cassidy had to check on her friends. She went back to where all her friends like to hang out. Jeremy, Fritz, and Susie all were in pieces still, but Gabriel was back. He was whole again. Yes, finally! Cassidy was so happy. She ran up to Gabriel and gave him a hug. Meanwhile, Michael could sense it. He could sense that he helped one of the spirits. He put one of them back together. Michael didn't fully know how he was doing that, but he knew he had to continue. He had to free all of the spirits. But first, his dad. Michael heard in an old tape that his boss had been playing for him that the spring lock suits respond to audio. Perhaps he could try that. Michael went to the cameras, selected a room away from his father, and played a BB noise. And it worked. The animatronic part of his father's suit took over and forced William to follow the BB noise. If William tried going in a vent, Michael just had to seal it. When that night ended, William got a glimpse of the guard going home. It was his son. Wasn't he supposed to be dead? Fine, he will do it himself. William began to realize he liked this new reality made for him. The mix of man and technology. Like this, William can be more powerful than he ever was before. This new reality was actually pretty cool. William Afton would call himself Springtrap. After he kills Michael, Springtrap was going to leave this place and wreak havoc on all. The next night, Springtrap doubled his efforts, trying to kill his son. Meanwhile, Michael had to deal with more burned hallucinations, and he found 4 phantom cupcakes on the cameras. Michael interacted with them all. Cassidy was then sent to another memory. This time, she was Toy Chica. Cassidy fed hungry customers until she was able to find the transparent wall. She then jumped through it and found another friend. It was Susie. Yes, Cassidy gave Susie a cake, and that led to Susie being whole again. 2 of her best friends were finally put back together again. Now, Cassidy knew she just had to fix Jeremy and Fritz. The next night, Michael interacted with tiles of the building, bringing Cassidy to a memory where she was at Fredbear's, and she was Fredbear. Cassidy phased through different areas of the restaurant until she found Fritz, gave him the cake, and he was put back together. The next night, Michael noticed a Shadow Bonnie doll in his office. He interacted with it, and this time, instead of Cassidy, Shadow Bonnie himself stepped in. Shadow Bonnie knew it was his duty to help these kids. That was why Charlie had created him. Shadow Bonnie went around a bunch of different memories until he found the one he was looking for. It was just a purple void, but he was there, Jeremy. Shadow Bonnie pulled out a cake and handed it to Jeremy. Cassidy had been waiting to be sent to the next memory, but it seemed like that wasn't necessary as Cassidy saw Jeremy become whole again. All of her friends were back. They were no longer in pieces. Finally, they could all play and have fun together again. The only one missing was Garrett. For some reason, Garrett wasn't able to enter the same space the other kids were in. That made Cassidy sad. She wanted to help Garrett too. Meanwhile, Michael knew he had helped all the spirits. Now, he just needed to face his father. Michael spent one more night facing off with his dad. He had found that weird stuff happened in the building, but he was used to it. Posters would change, paper pals moved, the cupcake moved, there was a random purple Freddy. You know, the usual. After that last night, Michael burned Fazbear's Fright to the ground. He did it. His father would be killed tonight. Michael went home that night, satisfied. Thankfully, authorities thought that the fire was just caused by faulty wiring, but they hadn't ruled out foul play just yet. Though it looked like Michael was in the clear. Unknown to him, however, his father had survived. William knew he always came back. Michael was proud of how he was able to finally help the other spirits, but his brother, for some reason, it felt like his brother still wasn't at peace. Michael knew he had to do something about that. He had visited the site of the fire. Fazbear's Fright was at an amusement park, but luckily it seems like the only thing destroyed was the stupid horror attraction. Remaining relics were being sold at an auction. Michael walked through the amusement park a bit. He found a booth that had merchandise based on the different rides and attractions. One of the merch options interested him, a security logbook. It was a fan-made book, but if anyone deserves to write in something like that, it was Michael. He had been through it all at this point. Michael purchased the logbook and took it home. He crossed out security and instead wrote survival. That was way more accurate anyway. Cassidy watched as Michael bought the book and took it home. She wanted to know who this guy was. Whoever he was, he just helped save her friends. Garrett said he recognized that guy as well. interesting, Cassidy and Garrett followed Michael home that day. While Michael flipped through the book and drew himself on vacation, or talked about wanting to exercise more, or wrote about his journey at Circus Babies, Cassidy and Garrett communicated using the book,